my entire approach that you can utilize to heal your chronic pain and symptoms. Hi everyone, welcome back to yet another video. Now, I've been teasing in recent videos my approach that I call the somatic safety method. And in this video, I'm going to really break it down and what the different components of this approach actually entail so that you know the areas you need to focus on to better your chances in healing chronic pain and symptoms. So we call our approach the somatic safety method. I like that name. We thought long and hard about it. Now, this approach was created by myself, by my partner Ann Hampson, and by my colleague Alex Klassen. Now, in this approach, we didn't just make it up. We pulled from a lot of evidence-based models that can support healing chronic pain and symptoms. So in my approach, I'm using pain reprocessing therapy, which was created by Alan Gordon, emotional awareness and expression therapy, which was created by Dr. Schubiner, Dr. Longley, Polyvagal Theory. Many of you probably are aware of Polyvagal Theory, the science of the nervous system. I'm including Somatic Experiencing, created by Peter Levine. And within this, we also utilize a lot of Qigong moves to support releasing built-up survival energy in the system. Now, the somatic safety method, I'm super proud of it because I think it is one of the most comprehensive approaches out there in healing neuroplastic pain and symptoms. And, in this approach, we kind of have 5 factors that we focus on. We call it a 5-factor model. And in this video, I'm going to break down each of these factors. And the reason we have 5 factors is healing is typically not simple for a lot of people. It's complicated, as we're complex human beings. And so we need a complicated approach to recover from neuroplastic pain and symptoms and maintain our recovery. So let's dive in to these 5 factors. Number 1, thoughts and beliefs. Now, in my approach, we focus somatically a lot. But early on, we need to change our thoughts and beliefs about why our chronic pain and symptoms are occurring. As we know, a lot of chronic pain and symptoms are not due to damage in the body or disease in the body. They're due to your brain and nervous system being stuck in a state of survival. So I give a lot of education around this on my channel. In my upcoming course, we have hours of education on what actually triggers and perpetuates chronic pain and symptoms, because we need to change this. If we keep following the medical system and the medical model saying that our body's damaged or diseased, we're not going to heal. It's just the way our brain works. If the brain believes the body's damaged, it's going to keep producing chronic pain or symptoms. So the starting place is we need to change the belief system. I use a lot of education. I support people in gathering evidence. We've pulled together some criteria for neuroplastic pain and symptoms. Again, I have a video on the criteria that are laid out in pain reprocessing therapy, and I'll link that to the top and put the link in the description below. And this will give you a sense of how you can start to assess, are my symptoms neuroplastic? Because changing the thoughts and beliefs at first is vital. Because if we don't start to believe that, all the other healing work afterwards is not going to be very effective. Now, I want to be clear, you don't need to believe this fully at first, but over time, we want to increase that belief that our chronic pain and symptoms are neuroplastic. Last week, I talked about the 7 stages of mind-body healing. Again, I'll put the link above and below. That's vital, understanding what stage am I in? Where am I at? Because we want to increase that belief that our chronic symptoms are due to our brain and nervous system being stuck in a state of survival. Now, with thoughts and beliefs, We also need to change just our thoughts and beliefs in general. Most of us have fearful thinking, obsessive thinking, hopeless, helpless thought patterns. And this negative thinking overall will start to affect your chronic pain and symptoms. And so we need to do a lot of work to change that. In my course and in the work I do with clients, I focus a lot on this. I use a skill called the 3R skill. Again, link will be above and below. Check that out. The 3R skill is vital to start to utilize to change your thoughts and beliefs. Now, thoughts and beliefs are tricky. We have to be very consistent in changing them. And later on in my approach, when we start to regulate the nervous system, usually this takes off. Because if we do a bottom-up approach of regulating our body and nervous system, typically our thoughts and beliefs will start to change naturally. So thoughts and beliefs is the first factor. Number 2, brain retraining and exposure. Ooh, everyone loves some brain retraining. We need to retrain our brain and nervous system out of chronic pain and symptoms. Now, I have a lot of somatic trackings on my channel. I'll link one to the top that you can check out, but we need to change our emotional response to our chronic pain or symptoms. I talk about the sensitization cycle, which we took from the pain-fear cycle. And the sensitization cycle helps us understand that nervous system dysregulation, difficult emotions, thoughts and beliefs perpetuate chronic pain and symptoms. And so we don't need to change the pain or symptoms at first. We need to retrain our brain to have a different emotional response and different thoughts and beliefs about it. If we can reduce the fight, flight, freeze, or shutdown response to our chronic pain and symptoms, they'll naturally start to fade out. Somatic tracking helps you do this. In my course, we have so many brain retrainings that we go through with people, because somatic tracking can be done hundreds of different ways. And we also do a lot of visualization, visualizing yourself actually healing. Now, this leads into graded exposure. Most of us with chronic pain, chronic symptoms, what's happened is we stop moving our body. We avoid more and more. Our life gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And I remember this truly by the end of my journey. I was in my basement. I was lying on the floor or in my bed most of the time. I wasn't working. I wasn't seeing friends. I wasn't doing hobbies. My world became so small because I was so scared that any activity or movement or even certain foods were going to trigger my symptoms. And so to heal, we got to approach. We got to widen our world. And I know that that's scary, but for best results, this needs to happen. You will not heal by keeping your world small. I've talked about this many times with people, but it's vital to understand. And so graded exposure is slowly increasing our activity, slowly starting to approach life again. I have an old video on graded exposure that I'll link to the top around movements and positions that you can check out. And in my course, I really talk about this in great detail. With graded exposure, I go through, lots of different practices to support people in starting to widen their world. So this is factor number 2. Number 3, processing emotions. We know from the work of Dr. Sarno, Dr. Schubiner, that emotions, chronic pain, chronic symptoms are very linked. And we get the equation wrong. Most people assume difficult emotions equal chronic pain and symptoms. A lot of people using a mind-body approach are, trying to heal by just reducing their difficult emotions. That's not it. That equation is wrong. Difficult emotions equals pain or symptoms. The equation is actually this. When we resist difficult emotions, it equals pain or symptoms. It's the resistance. So I talk a lot about the different ways we resist emotions. For some of us, it's what's called alexithymia, where we have almost no awareness. This often links back to trauma in childhood, where we just cut ourselves off. We live neck up. We're very much in our head or focused on the external world. And this is alexithymia, and I had some of this, where there was almost no awareness of my emotional state until it got so intense that it was unavoidable. For other people, they resist emotions by invalidating them, telling themselves, I shouldn't feel this way. Other people wouldn't feel this way. Suck it up, get over it. And a lot of times this can also link back to adversity in childhood, where we were invalidated. Our emotions were invalidated by our parents, by our peers, by our teachers. And as a result, we start to function like that in adulthood. In pain reprocessing therapy, they talk about how we start to view certain emotional states as dangerous. Fear and anger, I really viewed as these dangerous things that I never wanted to feel, that felt really scary to me. And so understanding, what emotional states do you view as dangerous? And then, lastly, Dr. Schubiner talks about this. What avoidances or defenses do you use? For myself, I'd go clean my house for 3 hours instead of feeling my anger, just keeping myself busy. I've done this with work as well, where I've become a workaholic, constantly working. And I love working, don't get me wrong, I love my job, but it becomes a way I avoid my emotional state and defend against it. Another common one, defense that I used to drive my partner and nuts, and rightfully so. I would just use humor. Someone would talk about something emotional, I'd crack jokes, use humor, so I didn't have to feel it. So understanding the ways we resist emotions is the first aspect that we talk about in processing of emotions. And then we have a whole somatic process that we use to explore emotions and release them. Emotions, they're energy in the body, and it gets stored, it gets stuck there, and that's going to increase your chronic pain and symptoms. And so this somatic process that I'll link to the top here and I'll put down below is vital to understand. In our upcoming course, we have 15 emotional practices with different emotional states, because whether it's anger, anxiety and fear, things like sadness, guilt or shame, or love or joy, we want to cover the full spectrum of emotions, because you're a human being, you're meant to feel the full spectrum. And so we do a lot of work in processing emotions. When I'm working with clients, I do a lot of work here. It's really vital. I've seen people try to just change their thoughts and beliefs, use, brain retraining graded exposure, and then cut their healing off there. That's not a long-term solution. If you don't allow yourself to learn how to process emotions and feel safe with them, that's why we call it the somatic safety method. You can feel safe even though difficult things are happening inside. People confuse this. This is another whole video I should do. Safety does not mean calmness and being relaxed. That's nice when that's happening, but I can tell you from experience, I can feel a lot of anxiety or anger and feel quite safe. I have a gentleness, a compassion with myself, a care for myself as I'm feeling that. And I have a lot of ventral vagal energy, safe, calm, connected, at ease energy that gets mixed in with the anger or with anxiety that helps me feel safe with it. And that's what I want for all of you. And I have some emotional practices on this channel that you can go and check out. But it's vital. This is a vital part that we really wanted to cover thoroughly in our approach. Number 4, regulating the nervous system and processing trauma. Our approach has a polyvagal lens. Polyvagal theory is the science of our nervous system. It's the science of safety and connection, as Deb Dana talks about, and Dr. Porges talks about. And so I use a lot of polyvagal practices. I help people map out their nervous system, map out their safety signals, danger signals, and learn what they need to actually regulate in each moment. We use a lot of breath work and somatic practices. I do this a lot with my clients. It's all in the course as well that's coming. Hopefully by the end of the month, no promises, but we're hoping to launch then. And we need this. I have so many free practices on this channel. If you're new to polyvagal theory, I have a video called 7 Steps to Regulate the Nervous System. Highly recommend you check it out. I'll put it above and below so you can, scan through it. It's a long video, but it really explains a breakdown of what we need to do to regulate. Now, nervous system regulation is paired with processing trauma. I recently did a video on trauma being stored in the body, because trauma is a dysregulated state of our nervous system that's become prolonged. after an overwhelming event. And so processing trauma is often vital. This is hard work. I hope all of you can find a therapist that you relate to, that you connect with, that you feel safe with to process your trauma, because I'm truly honored when clients trust me with that. I think this is really hard work, and to share that with someone and for me to be in the room with someone and support them in their healing is just so vital. And I do feel very honored by that, and the bravery by people, because I know from experience that's really hard stuff. But processing trauma, trauma, that's stored survival energy in the body. If we don't learn to work through that and release that, discharge it from our system, often the chronic pain and symptoms stay locked in place. Something I cover a lot with people is sensitization trauma. This is a term we made up in the somatic safety method. Sensitization trauma is the trauma that occurs from the onset or progression of chronic pain and symptoms. And this is a really common type of trauma that happens for anyone with chronic pain, chronic illness, and we need to spend the time processing that. And so that can be very vital because it keeps our symptoms locked in place when there's all this trauma surrounding them. And I know that that's really hard. I'll do a video on this soon, really break down what sensitization trauma is and what we can do about it. And finally, factor number 5, social safety. Social safety, I like that. Alex Klassen coined the name for factor number 5. I like social safety. And it's important. I think this is a factor that's missing in a lot of models that are out there. It's important to understand, here's the greatest mistake I see people make when healing. They use all the practices, the brain retraining, the emotions, the somatic practices, even processing trauma. They're doing all this stuff to create a sense of safety, but they're using it all to support a lifestyle or a life that's constantly sending signals of danger. If you're engaging in perfectionism, people pleasing, or you have this low dorsal vagal lifestyle where you're just shut down, barely moving, never seeing anyone, very isolated, that's going to be a factor that affects it. I talked about 2 types of lifestyles. This can be high sympathetic, which is perfectionism, high intensity, people pleasing, doing more and more, always on the move, never a spare minute for yourself, or the low dorsal vagal, where we're shut down, immobilized, almost non-existent in terms of social connection or being around people or having passion or purpose. These lifestyles, if you're living like this, you could do all the breath work, the brain retraining, the exposure, all of it. It won't make a difference. You're trying to force yourself to feel safe when your lifestyle doesn't support that. And I get it. I'm not here to blame anyone for that lifestyle. I've been in both of those lifestyles, and they were perpetuated and created based off the adversity that I faced. But we can do something about it. We can start to make shifts of the way that we live life. And that's what we talk about, social safety. What is the way that you live life that's going to naturally give your nervous system signals of safety? That's what we need to do. So if you've been doing all the mind-body work, but you relate to the high sympathetic or low dorsal vagal lifestyle, this is a sign that you probably need to do some work here and make changes. Now, the other thing around social safety is, what are the factors in your life that are sending signals of safety or danger? Your relationships with your partner, your friends, your family, your work environment, your school environment, your greater community, your greater society. If we're always getting signals of danger from the people around us or our workplace, it's going to be really hard to feel safe, and it's going to be really hard to recover. Same goes for society. Discrimination. People that are discriminated against often have high rates of chronic pain and symptoms. And this isn't shocking because they just don't feel safe. And those are harder changes to make, especially at a society level. But, with our relationships, with work, with school, sometimes we have to make hard choices. And I can't tell you what to do. I don't want to tell you what to do. This is your life and you can make these decisions. But I had to make a choice. There were friends that I stopped being friends with, and I don't regret those choices. It created more of a sense of safety for me, because these were friends that were abusive, and I came to learn that over time. I had to make changes in the way that I functioned in work and school. What jobs I took, I actually equaled that into the equation. I'm not going to take a high pressure job where the boss is a nightmare. Early on in my healing, I quit a job because one of my bosses was kind of rude and abusive, and I didn't want to be around that 8 hours a day. So social safety can involve some hard choices, but they're very important choices to make. And I empathize with anyone out there that's going through this, because this is not easy. Making big changes in life at first can create a lot of dysregulation in and of itself, but over time, if we want to move towards safety. So social safety, people, lifestyle, how are you living life? And what are the factors in your life that are sending signals of safety or danger? So this is my entire approach, the somatic safety method. Again, lots of these videos are on the channel. And it's important to note, I want to give credit to all the other models that we're pulling from. I want to be clear about that. Pain reprocessing therapy, emotional awareness and expression therapy, Polyvagal Theory, Somatic Experiencing, Qigong practices. This is not something we just made up out of thin air. We pulled from the great work that's out there that lots of people are doing to make a very comprehensive approach. So please put your questions or comments down below. Hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and I will talk to you all soon. Take care.